In the previous video, we were having a look at vehicles doing a U-turn and colliding with vehicles coming from the opposite direction. Here we're having a look at a vehicle doing a U-turn and colliding with a vehicle traveling in the same direction. I mentioned in the introduction to U-turns that each one of these subcategories has its own unique perils, but also that they have a few commonalities between the two. One of the commonalities is that a vehicle doing a U-turn has to cross multiple lanes. And with each number of lanes that is crossed, that proportionately increases the risk of an accident or a collision. That's the one commonality. The other is that doing a U-turn is, in most cases, a surprise event. So for other motorists, it's something that's unexpected. A driver may be traveling down, realizes that he's gone past an entrance and suddenly now needs to do a U-turn to get back on track in order to enter into the side entrance. Maybe the driver was daydreaming, perhaps realizing he's going in the wrong direction, unfamiliar with the roads, and suddenly decides to do a U-turn. There could be a variety of reasons as to why a driver would do a U-turn, but often when they do so, it's a sudden, unexpected event, so that increases the danger as well. We're going to have a look in this video at a number of real-life scenes depicting different variations on the scenario, just to highlight how these dangers can crop up and how we can try to be prepared for such an unexpected event. Let's run the animation to start off with. Okay, so we've got the driver of the red vehicle now doing the U-turn, and the driver of the green vehicle colliding now with the red vehicle. And this could also be for a number of reasons. Perhaps in traveling down in this direction, the green vehicle was in the same lane behind the red driver. And so he had checked his rear view mirror, saw there was nothing in the lane here, decided to slow down and then do a U-turn. But because of him slowing down, perhaps the driver of the green vehicle, now catching up to him as he's slowing down, decides to move out into this lane in order to bypass him. And this driver, now thinking that the lane is clear, does the U-turn and they collide. That could be one possible reason. Could be also that a driver is irresponsible, doesn't check their rear view mirror before turning. Or it could be that only in the turn they now check to their rear view mirror. So at an angle like this, if the driver was to check his rear view mirror, the angle at which he can see through that rear view mirror may not cover this lane properly in order to see any oncoming vehicles. Also, when a driver is doing a U-turn, traveling in the same direction, it's more awkward for him to be able to look over his shoulder because he's got to try and see almost directly behind him. So that makes the visibility more limited for the driver as well. So there could be a host of reasons as to why a scenario such as this exists. So in the first real life clip, we've got what we saw in the animation there, a driver doing a U-turn and now colliding with a vehicle traveling in the same direction. But there's something that I want to point out in this real life clip, in addition to the scenario that we're looking at of U-turns. Let's just run the clip. Okay, and the point that I want to make in this particular clip is that if it's going to be inevitable that you're going to be striking a vehicle, so if you were this driver, for instance, coming down, suddenly a vehicle does a U-turn in front of you, if it's possible, under those circumstances, it's inevitable there's a collision, make sure you connect rather with the back of the vehicle as opposed to the middle or the front of the vehicle. And there's good reason for that. The further you can connect with the vehicle towards the back of the vehicle, well, the more energy is absorbed in the impact by spinning the vehicle around. So if you had connected either the middle of the vehicle or the front of the vehicle, there would have been less chance that that impact energy would have been transferred into kinetic energy. In other words, energy of movement of the vehicle that's actually being struck. So you saw in this clip that as the back of the vehicle was struck, it actually spun the vehicle around. And because of that, a lot of the energy went into that motion of spinning the vehicle around, as opposed to the impact energy being absorbed by both vehicles. So that's one important point. In the next clip, I'll point out another reason why you don't want to strike the front of the vehicle. So let's just go on to the next clip then. So here we have a driver wanting to do a U-turn. This driver collides with the camera, and the camera strikes the front of the vehicle. Now, notice where the danger is. See if you can detect where the danger is in striking the front of the vehicle as opposed to the back of the vehicle. Okay, so we said in the previous clip not to strike the front of the vehicle, and one of the reasons was that the engine's in the front, and so because of that there's a more inertia presented by the greater weight in the front of the vehicle, and so there's more impact energy absorbed by the vehicles themselves. That's the one reason. But the main reason as to why not to strike the vehicle in the front is that it will then deflect you onto the opposite side of the road facing oncoming traffic. Now, fortunately, in this particular case, there weren't any threats from oncoming vehicles that are close to these vehicles crossing over the road. But you can imagine vehicles coming down this lane at a high speed. You deflected over into the oncoming lane, and so the impact from this oncoming vehicle in a head-on collision situation would be even worse than what the impact with the vehicle doing the U-turn is. And so that's one very good reason why we don't want to strike the front of the vehicle doing the U-turn in a scenario where we're traveling in the same direction. In this case, it wouldn't really have been possible for the camera to be able to avoid the front and strike the back instead. But were you in a position to do so, then rather to strike the back of the vehicle. In the next three clips, what we're looking at is the deception of a vehicle going in one direction, but the intention is to actually go in the opposite direction. Now let's have a look at this clip and I'll explain what I mean. We've got the driver of this vehicle ahead, and he pulls off to the side of the road. So for the camera, he may be thinking that the driver is simply wanting to go to the side of the road, and so he's free to go ahead. But notice what happens. All right, we just go back a section. So where you see a vehicle moving off to the side of the road, then don't just assume that that is what their intention is. Normally when a vehicle is going to do a U-turn, they try and increase their turning circle in order to be able to make the U-turn. And so to increase the turning circle, they move off to the side of the road so as to increase that arc that they're going to turn in. So be aware of that. If a vehicle moves off to the side of the road, it could be for the reason that they're wanting to do a U-turn. And so if we're more alert and aware of that, then we'll be more cautious in approaching any vehicles that then move off to the side of the road. So this is the second real-life clip depicting exactly the same thing. And this can happen where there's a side road vehicle. This vehicle that I'm pointing out here indicates in the direction that he's turning that he's wanting to go down the side road. That's what the driver would assume. In the meantime, it's the same thing. He's just moving off in the direction of the side road in order to increase the turning circle, and so comes back across the lane again unexpectedly. Okay, so just to repeat the point, see a vehicle moving off to the side of the road, don't just assume that they're heading in that direction. It could be for the purpose of doing a U-turn. So third clip illustrating that point. We've got this driver moving into the intersection. It seems as though he's turning right into the side road, but actually he's doing so for the same reason of increasing his probability of being able to make a U-turn, and so collides with a vehicle coming up behind him. Now, what I want to also point out, in addition to the deception of the vehicle moving in a direction and then changing that direction, is never to do a U-turn in an intersection. I mentioned this in the previous video as well, because in an intersection, there's so many other variables and permutations at play that by doing a U-turn in an intersection, it actually just adds to that mix of variables and increases the complexity and the probability of something going wrong. In the next section or category of the course, you'll see that I've got a special category of intersections, and when you go through that section of the course, you'll be amazed to see at how many subcategories it's actually divided into, just showing how many possibilities there are of things going wrong. And so we don't want to add to that by doing a U-turn in the intersection as well. So try and avoid intersections for U-turns, and also watch out for other drivers doing exactly this in an intersection. So the next two clips I've included just to show the visibility of a driver doing a U-turn. And what we don't want is that this driver is not visible to other drivers coming up behind him. So what we have here is that we've got a vehicle seeing this driver wanting to do a U-turn, slows down, gives him the gap. But because of his presence, now the visibility of the vehicle doing the U-turn is not that noticeable to these other vehicles coming up from behind. Neither can he see beyond this vehicle these other vehicles coming up from behind. So we've got to be cautious that when we're doing a U-turn, that we can actually see clearly down any of the lanes that we're crossing, either those in the same direction that we're traveling, and obviously the opposite direction as well. So the danger with colliding with vehicles in the same direction is that they're not as easy to be able to see and pick up as what it would be for vehicles coming from the opposite direction. In the next clip, what we have just around the corner here is a vehicle doing a U-turn. So this is exactly the wrong spot, because the camera or any other vehicle traveling in this direction is not able to see around the corner that there's a vehicle now wanting to do a U-turn, and vice versa. The driver of the vehicle doing the U-turn cannot see around the corner for any vehicles that are coming up behind him. So we want to do a U-turn in an area we've got visibility of vehicles behind us, but for a far enough distance to be able to make that turn safely. There we go, does the U-turn, and he's exactly the wrong spot because we've got vehicles on the other side of the road, so he's not able to make that turn with his turning circle, and so would have to be caught stopping there and having to reverse and then to maybe continue further. So all of these actions just increases the time that he's exposed to being struck by another vehicle. So you can see there was a section of the road that he could have traveled a little bit further down so that he was a bit further from the corner, but also no vehicles on the other side of the road, so he would have been able to make his turning circle a lot easier. So this driver was totally oblivious as to how he could improve the safety of his U-turn, but something for us to be aware of. So you mentioned intersections, not doing a U-turn in the intersection. The next couple of clips has a look at a variation on this theme. Let's see where the danger crops up here. Okay, so what we've got in this scenario is a vehicle in the outer lane doing the U-turn, as opposed to him now just continuing in his lane and turning down the side street. And so he's cutting across the camera who's on the inside lane, just wanting to go down the side street. So he's trying to cut across the camera in order to do a U-turn. So that goes without saying is obviously a wrong move and something we don't want to do. So just watch out for vehicles doing a U-turn in an intersection like that. The next one's an interesting one because we've got this vehicle doing a U-turn. Now notice where he does the U-turn. Okay, so he's actually exited the intersection, but maybe realizes at that point that he's actually taken a wrong turning, and so immediately tries to correct that by doing a U-turn. So the point or the lesson for us to learn here is that intersections themselves are extremely dangerous. We've got to be ultra cautious when going through an intersection. But once we exit that intersection, don't think that the danger is behind us, and now we can drop any awareness or alertness. But we might face this exact same scenario where a vehicle, after exiting the intersection, decides that he's going to be doing a U-turn. This next clip, wherever, and you'll see also, as I've described in a fair amount of detail in previous videos, where you've got a long line of traffic that's moving fairly slowly, you're always going to have somebody that's going to want to pull out from behind that line of traffic. Impatient, either in order to try and bypass the traffic and get ahead of everybody else, or in this case, this driver deciding it's not worth the wait in this line of traffic and decides to pull out, do a U-turn, and go back and perhaps take another route. But in doing so, one's got to be careful then that there's no other wise guy trying to bypass the traffic and traveling down the wrong lane. And that's what this scenario demonstrates. Now, I just want to go back to a slight section there. You saw that collision. But notice this driver, he first starts executing the maneuver of going into a turn, and then he starts indicating. And this is a point I've stressed a number of times also in previous videos. I'll stress it in this video, and I'll stress it again in other videos, that before you execute any maneuver whereby you're going to turn or cross any lanes, always indicate first. So indicate first, and not just indicate and then execute the maneuver straight away. Indicate first, check your rear view mirror, and after you have indicated for some time, only then do you start to carry out that maneuver. So never indicate and execute the maneuver at the same time. This driver was even worse. He started executing the maneuver and only then indicated. So the other point here when it comes to indicating or turning signal is that just by putting on one's turning signal or one's indicator doesn't give you the right to turn. That's only a notification to others, but not a right to turn. And so just be aware of that, or others that aren't following that.
Please like, subscribe, and get notified.